Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Friday, August 1st. Oh, boy. Sorry, Scott. I'm start over. Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Friday, August 1st, 2025, and it's my official duty to welcome you into episode 488 of the Buckeye Extra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome to the end of the week and welcome to August. We are inching our way closer and closer to when things are really going to start picking up for the Ohio State men's basketball team once again. Obviously, those of you that follow Ohio State sports are almost certainly aware that football camp started yesterday, and certainly a lot of the attention of the Ohio State fandom is pointed in that direction. But there's still a lot of basketball stuff going on this time of year. And I podcasted on Monday and let you all know that I would do another one by the end of the week because there was just more than I wanted to cover in one single episode. So that's what I'm here for. I've got two main topics I want to hit on with you, maybe two and a half. I'm going to keep this one relatively short because then it'll be with you sometime again next week to keep the conversation going. But right now, as we sit here on the calendar again, August 1st, recruits are allowed to start making some visits to campus. Cam Mercer, 2028 top 10 prospect from Cincinnati, is expected to be on campus today, and hopefully I'll have more on that before too much longer. But the Buckeyes as a team right now are finishing today their second to last week, or penultimate week, if you will, of summer workouts. Now the Buckeyes will practice today, and then the team will have 2 weeks off before everybody will report for one more summer workout. Or 1 more week rather of summer workouts. That will line right up until the start of the fall. So guys will basically be off for 2 weeks, come back, have 1 week at the end of the summer, and then jump right into the fall. So that's where we are on the calendar right now. Things, again, will certainly start picking up here before too long. And so I had a couple of things I wanted to hit on in this episode of the podcast before we officially flip the page to next week. Before we do that, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you subscribe, you'll automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our crack web team is able to handle them for you. Patrick Flaherty took the day off, so shout out to Scott Kirk for handling this and squeezing me in to the end of his workday, the end of the week. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review, please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks to everyone who's taking the time to do all those things. So the main thing that I wanted to talk about on this episode of the podcast is John Mobley Jr. and what his summer has been like and what that could potentially mean for the fall. And one of the things that really struck me, first of all, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this on the last episode, but so he got invited to the Chris Paul Elite Guard Camp. And that actually wraps up here today. It's an invite-only camp. There's some high school kids and some college players. There were 12 college players invited to this year's camp. A couple faces that he's going to see, again, presumably multiple times this season. But among the 12 invites, Elliot Cadeau from Michigan, Braden Smith from Purdue, Donovan Dent from UCLA, and Bennett Sturtz from Iowa. So I always think that kind of stuff is interesting during the summer. Like, I'm planning on getting and hopefully getting to talk to those guys, maybe a Big Ten Media Day, but about like what the camp experience was like and what they saw from Mobley. So that's the level of guard that received an invite to this camp, and John Mobley Jr. part of that group. So as I've talked about throughout on the podcast here, one of the things that really has stuck out to me throughout the course of the summer is when you just talk to people in general about like what they've seen or what this team could look like, that Junie seems to have taken a step and has had a really strong summer. And so I talked to Trey Burke about this, and I talked to Jake Diebler about this. We had a conversation on Monday and hit on a couple of topics, and one of them being this notion of like taking a leap as a sophomore, and what does that look like for somebody like Junie? Because like here's a stat that I think is really interesting. So he finished second in OSU history for made 3-pointers as a freshman. He hit 77 3-pointers last season. So then I thought, like, well, what could that mean for next year? Like, what does history tell us that could look like for sophomore John Mobley Jr. And what's interesting is that there's not really a comparison here in Ohio State history because the top three freshman three-point shooters in Ohio State history did not have sophomore seasons. D'Angelo Russell holds the record with 95. Bryce Sensabaugh second at 60, and Daquan Cook third at 54. This is going into last season. Michael Redd was fourth with 46 made three-pointers as a freshman. So nobody has made more than 46 three-pointers as a freshman at Ohio State and then returned for a sophomore season. So that would certainly seem to indicate that there's interesting things ahead for Junie, and assuming that you now go into a sophomore year where you're more comfortable, where you can make maybe that sophomore leap we always talk about. Like, so what does that look like for him? And that was when I talked to Trey Burke at the Kingdom Summer League last Sunday. He said the leap that he made from his freshman year to his sophomore year, where he was a Big Ten Freshman of the Year and then he went to National Player of the Year. He said it was all about what he did off the court, and he talked about his relationship with God and his promising certain things and holding up his end of the bargain and feeling then he reaped the benefits of that. He got rewarded for his commitment to his faith, as well as taking care of himself away from the court and doing all the things away from the gym that would help him in the gym. And I thought it was a really interesting answer because it's been well documented, John Mobley Jr. is one of the hardest workers, certainly on the team. It's impossible for me to say sport-wise or Big Ten-wise, but the workouts that I know he puts in are significant and are frequent and are early. And I've written about that. I got to go watch him go through, I believe it was a 5 a.m. workout at the Shot before his freshman season got started. So we're talking about a guy who's off the court work ethic is pretty significant. So that was one of the things that I talked to Jake Diebler about for a story that went online this week, which is that, like, are you seeing that kind of stuff from him? Like, has he taken a step when it comes to the off the court stuff? Is he doing those things that, like, Trey Burke talked about that made a big difference to him? And one of the things that Jake then brought up was how important that is to avoid how the season ended last year, which is, he pointed out after the Iowa game, so losing to Iowa in the Big Ten tournament, he said it's like 2 a.m. and like he came down to get like a water, like in the conference room where the team was. And Diebler said they just sat around and talked. And he said Junie told him, quote, "I get it now. I understand why you're on me about sleep and nutrition and recovery and that kind of stuff." So Diebler said he's gotten bigger and leaner. Said he's worked really hard on his body. So the thing I've been really excited about is there's a consistency to his approach. So Diebler pointed out, he doesn't have a 6'6" frame. He doesn't have a 6'9" wingspan. So how do you work on getting an edge on that next guy that you're going against? And I'm looking for the quote here exactly. He said, he and I talk a lot about the margins. We talk about how do you get an edge? How do you make up for, that kind of stuff, essentially. He said, well, we outwork people in nutrition. We outwork people in sleep and recovery. We outwork them in the gym and with film. He and I have had those conversations. The great thing is I know him so well that I feel like if he's slipping a little bit, we can address it right away. That's why I think he's had such a good summer, is because he's taken some real steps in that area. So as an example of like some of that growth that Diebler said he's seen, he said last year I had to get on him all summer because he'd stop playing when he made a mistake. He said I only had to do that once this year. He said I think he's had a really good summer. I'm really excited about what takes shape for him on the court as far as production goes, because I think he's primed to make a real jump. And then when it comes to like his body, you look at some of the numbers as this unfolded. You look at how last year ended for him, and it's clear looking at the numbers, like what physically, like that the increased workload had the toll that it took. So here's his scoring output in the final 6 games of the season. As Ohio State's trying to secure an NCAA tournament berth, ends up playing its way off the bubble during this stretch. He had 4 points, 8 points, 18 points, 20 points, 7 points, and then 8 points. And you can probably guess the 2 wins that were in there. He had 18 in the win against USC on the road, 87-82. And then in the double overtime home win against Nebraska, 116-114, he had 20 and he played 44 minutes in that game. After that, he had 7 in the loss at Indiana and then 8 in the Big Ten tournament loss to the Hawkeyes. So you start looking at that. You know, he was at 13.5 points per game entering the Northwestern game. And in those final 6 games, it was 10.8. The rest in those 6 games. And Ohio State went 2-4 in that stretch. So it also made me remember just how weird that Northwestern beatdown was. 70-49 in Columbus. Right after that, like, some guys started getting sick, and Junie had 4 points in that game. So it's clear that there's been an emphasis that you have to do all the right things all the time to make sure that doesn't happen as you get to the most important part of the season last year. And it certainly is worth pointing out that was not the role that was in the cards when the season started and Meechie Johnson Jr. was supposed to be playing significant minutes. And then he leaves the team after 10 games, and Junie goes from averaging about 20 minutes a game to north of 30. Like, that's more of a workload than he was supposed to have to take on. So when we start thinking about what could a sophomore leap look like for him, I thought the conversation with Jake Diebler was really interesting. And that's a big part of the reason why I felt like it was worth writing this story this week. And him certainly getting invited to that camp, I thought was a noteworthy development, that, there's some big things that are expected going into a sophomore year. And when I asked Jake just like about on the court, like, what have you seen from him this year? He said he's worked really hard on his body. He said his approach, even last year as a freshman, you'd see some really phenomenal plays. He's still doing that. He said his defense, he's been way more intentional. He's gotten better defensively. He said that's been impressive. It's been noticeable. He said his decision making, he's got to keep improving in that. He's certainly capable of being a really good decision maker and showed that some last year. He said the consistency is key. So moving a little bit to a different spot of the roster here, was watching the incoming freshman Matthew Grujicic, getting there, playing for Germany in the Eurobasket U18 tournament. And most recently, Germany lost to Latvia in the quarterfinals, and now will play Slovakia on August 2nd at 7:30 a.m. Eastern. And again, these games are all streamed for free on YouTube. It's kind of wild, honestly, that, we see like the things that you can't get a good live stream for, but then like here he is playing in Serbia, and the high quality video, there's not like a running commentary or anything like that. So it's a little bit of a weird kind of viewing experience in that regard, but you can clearly see everything. And it's been an insightful period to get to know a little bit more about his game and about, what he is about. So as we sit here on August 1st, he is averaging 23.4 points per game. That is leading everybody in the tournament. 8.8 rebounds per game. That is second among everybody in the tournament. And he's 5th in assists per game at 4.6. So he's put up some pretty impressive numbers. And I detailed on the last podcast some of my thoughts from the last game that I watched. Who did they lose to? It was Bulgaria. Germany had a big lead, and Bulgaria came fighting back, and he had a couple of turnovers throughout the game. I think he finished with 5. But there was an article on the Eurobasket's website where they highlighted him specifically and talked about his offensive game, his defensive game, strengths and weaknesses, and then basically came up with like a conclusion. And this is at the end of the group stage. So there's still more basketball to be played. And actually, after the group stage, in his next game against Sweden, he had 19 points in the next game. 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 9 assists. So just shy of a triple double. And then against Latvia, he had 31 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. He is averaging 3.8 turnovers per game against 4.6 assists per game. So we touched a little bit on the turnovers on the last episode, some of the things that I saw. But so here's what it said on the website in the story specifically about him. This is like in the overall summary of his game. This is, again, through 3 games. This is before he nearly had a triple-double and before he put up 31 in the loss just the other day. It says, Grujicic has stood out in Belgrade not only because of his statistical production, but also thanks to his flashes of tough, multi-level shot making. The Ohio State commit is a tremendously skilled scorer, and it's easy to envision him making an impact early in his college career with his unique combination of size, physicality, ball handling, footwork, and touch from multiple levels of the floor. While there are some limitations in his physical profile, namely quickness and explosiveness, refining some aspects of his shot selection and decision-making will be crucial to improve his efficiency and thrive at a high level of competition. Still, few players have looked more difficult to stop in Belgrade. If this tournament has made anything clear, it is that Grujicic, the pro-level skills are undeniably there. So, thought that was worth passing along. And that's, again, before he nearly had a triple-double and before he put up 31 in his most recent game. So, we'll see how things progress and what this game here on Saturday looks like for him. But overall, you certainly see like high level scoring ability. There's, as the summary pointed out, some quickness and some explosiveness question marks there that certainly there's room for growth. But he has undoubtedly put up some big numbers and caught some, or opened a few more eyes, I think. We'll be curious to talk to associate head coach Joel Justice, who is out there in Serbia, to not only watch him, but do a little bit of recruiting. The Buckeyes are still potentially going to add one more player to this roster before all is said and done. And their potential is there that it could be someone that they identify as a project that they could sign and bring over and see how they develop. So we'll keep an eye on that one, see where that situation goes. But there was at least an Ohio State presence there watching Matthew as he played for Germany here in the U18 Eurobasket. One more quick note before I wrap this one up, because like I said, I want to keep this one kind of tight. But I saw a headline today from 24/7 Sports, Adam Finkelstein, who's one of their top writers and does a lot of stuff for CBS. He had a list of like top guards that he saw in the Nike EYBL circuit, and he highlighted Ohio State commit Marcus Johnson and described him as a guy who can, quote, get a bucket on demand. So thought that was at least a little nugget worth passing along. Certainly big things expected when he gets to campus next year after he finishes his senior season of high school basketball. And I don't know that we know yet where that will be, whether he will still be at Garfield Heights or not. So again, something else to stay tuned for. So I'm going to wrap this one up now. I have a couple more stories coming up here the next few days. To look for them at the start of next week. I'd encourage you also go check out the story that I wrote about Gabe Cupps and his family and how they were able to surprise his sister Allie with a new car. Really enjoyed getting to talk to the Cupps family, and thought it was a good look into the family dynamic and into some of the other stuff that can come about thanks to NIL. We hear a lot of things about the impact that it is having on the sport, and it was nice to see like something like this. It was a fun story to write, and I'd encourage you to go check that out at dispatch.com. So now I'm going to wrap this one up. As always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardydispatch.com. Thanks again for listening. And thanks to Scott Kirk for grabbing this one and getting it published. I'll be back with you sometime next week. So until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.